obviously. But no, this is the Morse Code Podcast, episode 99. I'm here, Soapy Priap with Dan Morse, and we'll call this the Aaron Donald / Jay Crowder episode for 99.
Jay Crowder.
Yeah.
Good call.
I used to have a shirt, 99 Problems. There was this guy, Beast from the NE. I don't know if you guys follow him. He does like a lot of branding stuff, Boston sports. And during the Isaiah Crowder era, he had the best shirts, 99
That's
Problems.
Dope. That's sick. I think we talked about this before on air, Soapy. I remember there used to be a shirt they would sell like at the Garden. It was the Crowder jersey with like his like fake like dreadlocks like down the back of it. It was like printed like hair on the shirt. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Soapy? I don't know if you remember that, Bobby. When was Jay Crowder in Boston? Like 5 years ago at this point.
Yeah, he
from
got here in 14
to like 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17.
Those were cool, but I don't think I could have pulled it off. But those were cool marketing.
Oh, so they were the real? It wasn't on
No.
It
was literally just printed on the shirt. Just the words Crowder were. But I was like, no. Plus, they're probably like $59.99 at the actual Garden, like for the T-shirt. Have you guys ever bought an actual merch from the Celtics store at the Garden? It's incredibly overpriced.
At the store, no. Have you, Bobby?
I might have bought a Bruins jersey because those are great to wear in the winter. They really are. And then you go to events and stuff, and I don't know where else you would buy those. So I think way back when I bought one of those, but as far as
I believe they're called sweaters, Bobby.
Oh yeah, whatever.
Hockey sweater.
I've been in basketball mode for too long now.
We have a handful of hockey hardos who will probably listen. They're dying to like jump at people who say that.
That's really how it goes, though. You're one way or the other. The same season. And I used to love the Bruins back when I bought that. Like I'd probably watch every game. And now that I'm as deep into the Celtics as I am, I barely watch ever. And it's too bad because they're still an awesome team.
Yeah. Honestly, actually, I should probably formally introduce you. We have
either start over or just introduce Bobby. Go ahead.
No, we'll just introduce him. This is Bobby Manning from CLNS. Bobby does a lot of stuff. I'm looking at the Twitter bio so I get it all right. So Bobby does work for the Celtics Blog as well as Boston Sports Journal, which I noticed that was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, the beginning of the season, I started writing previews and doing some features for them.
Nice.
Yeah, congratulations, man. Tell Greg Bedard we said hello.
For sure.
And yeah, mostly I know Dan does too. Check out the Celtics post-game show every night after every Celtics game. Big fan. You guys get like thousands of viewers every night, and it's more entertaining than the games themselves. Like not that that's like a high bar to clear these days.
I was gonna say there are many things I could name quite easily that are more entertaining, but
that's what's crazy to me, because you would think over this last month or so that people would start tuning out. And I know we'll talk about the like storyline of this a little bit, but this used to be a radio show. The YouTube thing that we do now was a radio show online for like probably back to 2009. I got started on it around 2016, but every year it was just like a call-in radio show. And this year we decided we were going to bring it to video, put it on YouTube, all that stuff, and just have like the same cast of characters on there every time. It'd kind of be like a rotating group of like 7-8 people before. And this year we decided just, keep the same 4 people, build some chemistry. And that's the craziest thing about it to me, is that even though the team has been so down, that people say exactly what you said there, that like it's the entertainment they look for on the night, because the game's not entertaining.
Dude, I definitely watch, like, so you guys typically go for about 75-90 minutes, I'd say, and I watch more, if not all of that, than the actual game time that I watch of the game. Like, it's crazy, because that's how good you guys are and how much the Celtics currently suck.
Yeah, I don't know which one is more. No offense. I don't know if the Celtics blow more or the post-game show is that excellent, but it works out well. But yeah, so I mean, what were you doing before you started doing? I mean, or I guess how'd you come to get involved with everything you got going on right now?
So I'm pretty young. I don't think people realize how young I am. 23.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
and so I got started in this when I was like 18. I've known for a long time that I want to be in sports media. Probably back to like freshman, sophomore year of high school, I was watching Thanksgiving football games with my cousin, and we'd just always be talking about games or, you know, whatever else was going on, the headlines. And I'd pretty much text everybody in my contacts and start talking about like news when it dropped. Yeah. So people would really get accustomed to me like starting conversations about the news. And really, I'd be the first one to tell people when stuff happened. So they're like, why don't you just start a blog? So I started doing some blogging. I started writing about my high school's football team, which was great because I got.
Where'd you go to school? Or like, where'd you grow up again?
Peabody High. So just north of Boston.
Nice.
And I basically just tried doing anything I could to get involved. And that involved writing for a website called CelticsLife.com, which is like when I started to hone in on the Celtics specifically around probably 2013, 14 range, first year of Brad Stevens. And then I eventually got noticed through that to write for Celtics Blog, which I started in 2016. And that's a whole cool story in itself. But just as like a short, once I started writing for Celtics Blog, they're partners with CLNS. They do the video side of things and locker room video and that kind of stuff. So I met their CEO, Nick Gelso, who is on the show occasionally too.
He was our first guest on our show, actually.
He's I mean, I can't say enough things about him and what he's meant to my career, but
yeah, he's cool.
He basically said, oh, come on the post-game show. And a guy named Justin Poulin and John Duke were running it back then, who host Celtics Stuff Live, which is still a pretty popular Celtics podcast. And that's basically how I started getting involved in CLNS Media. I just started doing more and more things as they got bigger and bigger, because really all CLNS was back then was like a handful of podcasts, including theirs, a post-game show, like Nick's pop culture podcast, and like just like a few shows. And it really was like nothing compared to what it is now. Like the last 5 years, it's really become like something much bigger, much more like legitimate and known in the Boston area and going beyond Celtics and the NBA. So like my life through high school into like the first year of college was really just jumping to like whatever I could do writing wise. And then like I never imagined myself getting into podcasting. I always saw myself as a writer, reporter, like traditional media. And when that opportunity came around, like I probably was like very monotone and like didn't have much like broadcasting experience at all. And like I just basically said, all right, this is a way I can get better at something that I'm not very good at right now. And fortunately, like when I look back on like the early shows I was doing and the like early podcasts that I was doing, which was my podcast back then, like it's day and night. So I was like so happy that I was able to do that, because if it wasn't for like those years, I probably never, ever would have been anywhere close to being able to do like a post-game show like I am now.
Yeah. No, that's sick. I mean, like I said, I remember, this show, our show has always had a nice tie with CLNS Media. Because like I said, we're coming up on like almost a year been doing this. So obviously you're a lot more involved in this than we are, but I don't even know how we got in touch with Nick Gelso. Like now think about it. Like I know you interacted with him here and there on
he probably sent out Twitter. A crazy tweet.
Probably, yeah. And he came on and it was fun. And we're like, oh, that was cool. And then, but he was very proactive. Like, hey, like I had a blast. And it's like, yeah, we know you work with one of our bigger at first, like goals for a guest was Cedric Maxwell. I'm really, yo, you work with Cedric Maxwell. LOL. If he ever wants to come on our show, let us. And he's like, done, no problem. Like, let me know when you guys are free. I'm like, holy shit. So it led to that. And then, we've done stuff with like Joe Sway and the Causeway Street podcast and stuff like that. So, CLNS Media is the shit. Like, can't say enough good stuff about what you guys have going on.
Yeah. It's like, it's the perfect mix at this point of, like obviously traditional stars like Jeff Goodman, Sherrod Blakely's with us now, Bob Ryan. But then you just have like guys like Joe Sway and me and like even Jimmy, who have just kind of like been like digging at the surface and like trying to break into this field for so long now. And like we're passionate people who just are very real, like
definitely.
So you have like that mix of like people that everybody knows, and then kind of like these people who are like pushing to like get to that level. And so it's like a nice mix of like old and new, really.
I agree. And it's nice because like, obviously the way like not even sports media, just media consumption in general, such a high volume. Like there's just so much out there. And I think people at this point know where they need to go to get, like, stat nerds can go here. Someone who's just looking to see national stories can go here. What's nice about, what you guys do on the post-game show and like Causeway Street, for example, and everything else, it's real. Like, it's real conversations with fans who know what they're talking about. And it's just, like Sophie said, it's hard to fill 90 minutes with, or not, maybe it's not hard, but it's not as valuable to fill 90 minutes with, let's run through the box score. Let's talk about this, and that. It's having real conversations that I think that's what people are looking for. And it's nice to have outlets where people can do that. And you guys offer that. So it's great. Yeah. And this goes without saying. I mean, we'll plug everything in the show notes, but, definitely check this stuff out. Like, you guys pretty much pick up right when the game ends, right?
Yeah, every game. I think we've done every game going back to the beginning of the bubble in this format.
Yeah, that's sick. That's great. So let's transition here. So I mean, let's talk some present day Celtics. Let's start with post deadline. And I said this on the show, on Twitter, whatever. I was giving myself, like, strictly as a fan, like a hard deadline reset. Like, all right, everything that's happened before this, I'm over. Let's have a fresh start, see where we go. And it started out great. And then the last couple of games, maybe I'll let you speak to, but what are your thoughts, kind of what they did at the deadline, and then how the product has looked since?
Well, we haven't seen the fully formed team since.
I know. Yeah.
Various reasons. Evan Fournier testing positive once he got in Oklahoma City. Robert Williams getting sick for this last game. And so that's really become the story of this season, is that when one piece comes in, another piece comes out. There's been multiple pieces out at various times throughout this year. So this team really has never had a chance to be its fully actualized self. Now, I said this last year too, because obviously the same thing happened last year. Gordon Hayward went down. You need to have a team that can sustain loss, because pretty much every single team during a regular season, and especially in the playoffs, is going to suffer some kind of loss. Ultimately, that's the kind of luck that shakes things out and decides who the champion's going to be. I mean, we saw it last year. Miami had a couple different injuries in the finals, and Lakers made it all the way through. But the Celtics now going on, I guess, 2 seasons, because they were pretty deep in 2019. If they lose anyone at the top level of their roster, it's over. I mean, Robert Williams now at this point, that was a pretty loaded position on the team coming into the year between Tristan Thompson, Daniel Tice, and now that's just Rob. You end up with 40 minutes of Mo Wagner, who I just think has been horrible to start.
I was just going to say, you're not excited for more Mo Wagner minutes?
No. I mean, his track record in the NBA, it's not long, but it has not been very good at all through age 23. And then
I just said the other day, it's like, I don't remember Mo Wagner post Michigan. I didn't even know where the fuck he came from. Like, that's when he said, like, hey, we got him from the Bulls. I was like, oh, why are all the pictures in a Wizards jersey?
Well, it's so interesting now. The Lakers have become LeBron's team, champions, like face of the league. But for the 2 years before that, they were the team that was taking the wrong guys, not developing their young players. The Magic Johnson quitting at the press conference team, and Mo Wagner was part of that. Like, he was not a very good pick for them. And fortunately, they were able to dump him in some sort of salary dump out to Brooklyn, I think, or Washington. Yeah, I think it was part of signing LeBron that they dumped him out there. He goes to Chicago at the deadline, and then he comes to here. So I don't know. He hasn't been great in the NBA so far, and now he's here. And what frustrated me, you asked about my thoughts of the last 2 games. It really feels like last night in particular, losing the Mavericks, that Stevens, he lost Tice, and now he's trying to make Mo Wagner and Luke Kornet Tice, which doesn't really work. I mean, you saw them throw a lob to Wagner. You saw Kornet playing like heavy minutes in that pick and roll defense, and he's shown flashes there, but he's not Tice. He's just not. Like, he hasn't had the 2 years in the system. He's not as, I guess it's kind of a toss-up who's the better shooter there, but I think Tice is the better short roller, better passer in that position. I mean, Tice is so good for this team that you knew losing him, even if Fournier was going to be a nice addition for this team, was going to put another pressure on a different spot on the team. And that's been frustrating to watch so far.
So were you, I mean, just going back to the deadline, even if you just call it Tice for Fournier, pretty much, were you not happy with that? Were you upset to see Tice go?
I understood it. I wish they could have either dumped Tristan Thompson, which I think they'll have to do some other way now at this point, because he just doesn't seem like he's ever going to be fully integrated in this team.
He blows.
Yeah. And I was so disappointed. I was his biggest advocate coming into this year, and it feels like for various reasons it hasn't worked. And then, they only had so many other options for getting below the luxury tax, which is a frustrating thing. But I do understand why they don't want to do the repeater tax, which like multiplies you from like $1.25 for every dollar you spend to like $3 for every dollar you spend. So it's a significant multiplier if you're in the tax for consecutive years. And so they figured that dumping Tice was going to be the way to do that, because they probably felt that they couldn't keep him at the end of the year. But man, Tice was so good for this team for 2 years. I mean, he switched positions this year because of Thompson, did a pretty good job with that. And he's one of the guys on this team, as we get into the story of this year's team, who I felt like really sacrificed, was very vocal about what they need to do and what they weren't doing right through their lowest moments, and really had become a leader on this team. Now, I think it's tough to be a leader if you're like the 5th through 8th guy on the roster like Tice was, but you heard him time and time again when he was at his pressers and just talking as the face of the team there in any given moment, that he had really felt like he was going to becoming one of the elder statesmen to this team. And I know Stevens was caught off guard that he was shipped down. He probably was too.
Yeah. Good. So I knew you wanted to.
I had one serious question and one non-serious. I'm going to start with the non-serious because it's been tough around these parts. So
let's have a little fun. No shit.
Bobby, I would say the past week or two has been interesting to watch, and there's been 3 plays that have stood out in my mind that I'd like to rank for you in terms of frustration levels.
I think I can guess one. Can I guess one first?
Oh, that's even better. Let him do it.
All right, I'll try to guess all 3.
Okay.
Was it Mo Wagner chasing down the fast break and throwing it right to the Mavericks for the bucket?
That's one of them. Yep.
Was it Jaylen Brown almost falling out of bounds and throwing it the other way, and Kemba just standing there half court?
That's 2. Yep.
And what's the third one? All right, give me the third one.
The third one's the most egregious. I'll give you a hint. Half court.
Oh,
it was technically an offensive play.
All right.
Yeah.
So I went into that like by the letter of the law, and I was wondering why, if there was 0.3 seconds left on the clock and Pritchard touched the ball, I think the shot clock should have went off right then, because if you're on defense and the offense threw the ball and someone on the defense tapped it, the clock would just run out in that spot. But
because it's still no possession.
Yeah.
It's not determined. It doesn't switch to the other team.
So I almost felt like Smart should have been bailed out in that spot. But from the ref's perspective, if the guy's going to do that, just toss the ball over the hoop after he gains possession, I guess he probably deserved to lose it.
Well, I've always had this question. So going into the jump ball, that was obviously Pelicans' possession. They had 0.3 left on their shot clock, right?
Yeah.
So maybe unless I'm missing something obvious, in what scenario would the Celtics have 0.3 seconds to shoot the ball? None, right?
No.
It's almost like I said, stupid question, but I'm just making sure that
and Smart was on the court for the stop.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Smart also was the one who instigated, didn't he switch someone out from jumping to have someone else go in?
Yeah,
he was running point on something.
Yeah, so he was organizing it, but it really looked like he came running out of the locker room doing like a Lamar Jackson or something, got subbed in, and thought the 0.3 was for the how could you think it was for you?
Right.
It's just like a next level lack of focus. Like, where was his mind?
Dude, everyone on the court knew, because they had to throw up the tip twice because no one wanted to tip it.
That's the other thing.
Because the Pelicans were like, oh, well, we're going to lose the possession anyways. So I don't understand. Like, that was one of the most absurd plays I've seen in a while.
Real quick, because I do want to hit on all 3 of these plays. Bobby, you might know the old rule book better than we do. Do you have to jump on a jump ball? Like, what if neither player just refuses to?
I mean, you could stand there like all night and just keep having.
Like, if the ball goes up and just bounces, is it just at that point whoever?
That's what happened the first time they threw it up,
right?
And then Pritchard just said, "Whatever, I'll take it."
Fuck it, I'll do it.
Because they're not just gonna stand there all night with that.
Okay,
it's like the same play in football as when the punt starts rolling. Like, they're not just gonna stand there and stare at it for.
Yeah, exactly. But the equivalent would be if like the team on offense, aka Marcus Smart, touched the ball and just threw it out of bounds or something. Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. And now I was looking at the play-by-play, and I think it was originally given to him as a turnover, but they ended up changing it to a missed 46-foot jump shot.
I love it, dude. And that probably pisses him off the most because it affects his shooting.
And the best thing too is that, like, we talked about the clock runoff there. What may have actually happened if they start the clock after one team gains possession off a jump ball, which might actually be the rule. I thought it could have gone either way. The only way that would have worked is if Smart like did a tap shot, which is exactly what he did. Like, he didn't grab it and shoot it. He like swung it with his arm up to like perfectly beat the shot clock. Like, what he did if he was on the Pelicans would have been perfect.
Yeah. Oh, that's what the Pelicans needed.
If he was a Pelicans player, that would be labeled as a heads up play by Marcus Smart.
I love that.
Unfortunately, he plays for the Celtics, but
I was trying to think. That's one of my favorite things about sports, are those ridiculous plays that just blow your mind, that like professionals would actually do that. The one that's always been my favorite was the Colts fake punt against the Patriots, where everyone went off to the right side.
Phenomenal.
It was like one guy snapping against three. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, obviously the butt fumble.
I've got another similar basketball one, actually. I know Dan remembers this. Do you remember this, Bobby? It was a game. It was UConn at Texas. And it was about like
hold on, I'm just gonna grab Ellie's bone real quick. Go ahead.
Sorry. All right. It was about like 8-9 years ago, where it was a close game. UConn got the rebound off of a Texas miss. Guy grabbed it, and there were probably like there were at least 8 to 10 seconds left, so enough to either call timeout or dribble the ball up. And instead, he fired it almost full court, and like in the very same like baseball throw motion as Marcus Smart. And they cut to like Jim Calhoun on the sidelines, and he's like, what the hell was that? And it went into the throw was almost hilarious, because most of the time when you see a full court shot, it either like just barely gets there or just gets into the first row. This ball landed in like the 10th row of the stand. So this guy like fired it.
I remember that vividly.
All-time video.
Yeah. I think I saw Felger and Maz the other day. They were comparing it to J.R. Smith. Which I think is comparable. Shot clock.
The timeout thing?
Yeah.
And that one was on the biggest stage. So the whole world.
What was that? He just didn't know.
He caught an offensive rebound down one, I think it was.
Yeah,
it was tied.
No, they were tied.
Because they went to overtime, and he ran it out as if they were up one.
Correct.
Trying to kill it.
That's actually one of the better like sports screenshots of all time. LeBron just with J.R. Smith at the call.
It became a great meme. That's a good handful of plays right there, but that's what I'm talking about. Those plays that are just so stupid that you end up laughing at them for days and days. And really, like, so much stuff moves so fast in sports media now that like news dies pretty quickly. Great games, even there's a game 2 days later, but those moments, those will last at least like 3 days. We're still talking about it 3 days later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I took a video of that, posted it on Twitter, and I just wrote WTF Marcus Smart, and immediately like a bunch of people who didn't follow me like liked it and retweeted it, and I was like, yeah, I mean, everyone else who's watching this game is probably thinking the same thing. Like, I've seen Kyle Kuzma's had some funny plays this year. I don't know if I meant to ask you if you watch like games on your nights off of just like around the league, but real quick, I think the Mo Wagner one, in terms of making the right play and the wrong play, that was the wrongest play that you can make in basketball. Diving out of bounds to save a ball directly into the other team's basket, or directly under the other team's basket.
Yeah, especially on a break. Like, you have to have a general idea of who you're saving it for. Unless it's going to be out on you. Although in that case, if it was even out on you, like, that's better than giving up the basket there. You just want to set your defense again. But that's my problem with him. He just, like, it's energy and hustle, but it's not really toward anything. And at the end of the day, he ends up with more fouls and points, and like, he's always trying to draw a charge instead of actually playing defense. And this guy was so great at Michigan. Like, you said it yourself, he was one of the best players in the country, and I know his brother is now too. And so I hope his brother's a little more ready for the league than he was.
Yeah, I definitely hope so.
I got one more play. You probably didn't see this one, but I'm obviously a huge Syracuse sports fan. And Syracuse was playing, I want to say, no, it wasn't Georgia Tech. They beat Georgia Tech. I think they went 1-10 this year, and that was their only win. But I think whoever they were playing, they were making a last-second charge down the field, and then enough time to get one more snap off, one more play off, and they were at like the 15-yard line, so they could have scored and gone ahead or tied it, whatever it was. And the quarterback, the clock was down to 3 seconds, 2 seconds, and he snapped the ball and spiked it, and the clock ran off, and that was the game.
Wait, what down was it?
Was it 4th? I have to almost look it up right now and play it. I'll share my screen and play it.
Yeah, I'd love to see this.
Wait, it was from this year?
Yeah, that was from this year, and Syracuse went 1-10, so it was just.
Oh, nice.
It was just like the epitome of the season, and the epitome of Syracuse football, really too. I'm obviously more of a Syracuse basketball fan,
right?
But the football team, a lot of people have a lot of hope for them every year, and it ends up going something like this.
Oh, that's not great. Yeah, that Colts one is a great.
Oh,
throwback.
It was 4th down. That's what made it funny. Nice. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. I don't know if I have the ability to do so.
Yeah.
And
we've never tried it, so this would be pretty groundbreaking if this works.
All right, you have to toss it to me.
How do I do that?
Soapy, toss it to him.
Oh, you know what? I think
you press the 3 dots on my screen.
Make host. All right.
Nice.
This could be permanent, Bobby, and you might just have to jump in on every one of our.
For our audio listeners, Soapy's going to break this down pixel by pixel so you can follow along.
Yeah, this is the first time you guys are seeing this. All right, so it was NC State. They were down 7. They were at the 7-yard line. So I set it up completely wrong, but now you're going to get
this is awesome.
What really
just
happened.
That screenshot of the score and down in distance is perfect.
All right, so this was 3rd down.
Already off to a great start, just running backwards. Okay.
All right, so now they get knocked back to the 19.
Yeah, so the quarterback, for the audio listeners, quarterback just got tackled at the 19 after starting at like the 12.
It's 4th and goal.
Yep.
And spike.
Oh, the 4th down spike. You don't see that very often.
I was trying to think of why it was so funny, and now I know it was 4th and goal, and he spiked it.
Oh, he's at a loss.
And that was the last game of the year, I think. That was 1-10.
Oh, sweet Jesus. That's how they walk it off. Oh, NC State coach is very excited. Great play call on defense. Put him in a sardine can. Boy,
fortunately for Smart, like it wasn't at that spot.
Right.
In a game where
it was
blew a game.
Right. But so let's kind of get back on the tracks here. So
We're just breaking down bloopers for now.
No shit. Marcus Smart in general, I've kind of gone back and forth. Where are you on the Marcus Smart is untouchable conversation, or is he like inevitable to be moved? Is he someone who should be moved, will be moved, can be moved? What do you think?
Well, you would like to have a guy like that be a Celtic for life, for sure, because it feels like he could be a guy who would have his number retired, who you'd be thrilled to win a championship with. And really, if they could just put the right front pieces in front of him, he'd be like the perfect 5th or 6th man on the team. He really was in 2019, and people forget that when they went in the playoffs that year, he was injured.
Yeah,
and he barely ended up playing during that postseason run. So I always wonder how that would have impacted that team. But now, like he came into this year with Kemba Walker down, Danny Ainge calling him like one of the 3 centerpieces of the team, which
that's mistake number 1.
Yeah, I don't know.
He took that as minimum 10 3-point attempts a game. Got it. Thanks, Dan.
I don't know why he went ahead and did that. Probably some uncertainty over Kemba and whatever. I think now that you're in a place where you need to build for now and a little bit into the future. Smart's not old, but I think it's very possible we've seen the best of him. I don't know how much upside he has left to go. His 3-point shooting is what it is. His defense has regressed in a pretty significant way this year. And, he's an awesome passer, but he's not quite a pure point. He's going to be jumping on the ball, off the ball a little bit. He's not going to lead the offense the whole game because he can't get to the net consistently. He doesn't have a great mid-range shot. You got to be a little more of a threat offensively to be a lead point guard, even though he's a phenomenal passer.
Yeah.
So I was so torn by the Gordon thing. I mean, obviously, if they could have gotten Vucevic, do it in 2 seconds. But from everything I heard, they didn't have a package whatsoever short of Jaylen Brown that could have done that. So Aaron Gordon, that one's so tough to me. Like, they're free agents at the same time after next year.
Yep.
Gordon's a little bit younger, but has probably proven himself less in his career so far than Smart has. One's obviously a wing, one's a point guard. So you would have been losing a lot at point guard, but could Gordon have had higher upside in Boston's system? Could he have made them a more complete defensive team? Could he have found his shot here, or his offensive game as a fourth or fifth option instead of a first? I thought there was a lot to like about that, especially since you were going to swap in Fournier as a lead guard in Smart's place. And so, like, gun to the head, I probably would have said yes to that if that was the deal, just Smart for Gordon swap. I don't know what kind of picks would have been in there. I know they wanted 2 firsts, so like Smart and 2 firsts would have been a lot. Maybe that's what ultimately did break this down. But
for Aaron Gordon,
so what did they end up getting? They got a first in RJ Hampton, essentially, a first in 2025, so 2 firsts, and then the contract, which was Gary Harris. So I can imagine Smart and 2 firsts probably would have beat that.
Damn, I guess, yeah. Have you seen the Soapy and I were involved in this on Twitter around the deadline? Did you know Aaron Gordon has a documentary, Mr. 50?
Everybody's gonna have a brand now.
I'm serious. Have you seen that?
This is the first one by
but
far.
I'm not surprised.
Catch Bobby up to speed.
Contest?
Yeah,
correct.
It's about how he got snubbed in the dunk contest, and it's like a 13 to 15.
And that's why he wears
video.
number 50, right, in Denver now.
Yeah,
that's deplorable.
Because of the dunk contest score.
Yes.
Oh man,
it probably was the last good dunk contest, but still, that's
great.
That's an odd chip to publicly have on your shoulder,
especially if you have any inkling. And I think most players do kind of know their image now online and what people are saying about them. And the thing about him was that no one, like casual fans, hadn't watched him outside of the dunk contest. Like no one knows anything about him as a player outside of the dunk contest. And so that's just playing into that notion, because I think he could be a pretty good player.
I think he is a pretty good player. I mean, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a scrub.
He's been miscast in Orlando, and they've had so many injuries. I mean, they made the playoffs back-to-back years before this. So that's, I know it's not the East Finals or the Finals, but it's something.
I think it's also easy to forget guys that get drafted by the Magic, first of all. And like,
I agree.
And actually, that's funny because you had tweeted something about that earlier this week, right? I remember responding to like how Orlando just used to be like a cooler place, but I remember him in Arizona, and I think he came out as a lottery pick. He had to have.
I think he was Orlando 6th overall.
Yeah,
and he might have been the Marcus Smart draft, since they're both on the same contract. Yeah,
good point.
He was like he's always been athletic, and I thought that he was going to be more of a defensive guy, and I feel like he was in the beginning. And similar to Smart, he's kind of regressed over the past couple of years too, a little bit. Yeah, maybe he just wants to fucking win dunk contest now, and that's it.
He might. What did he do? Didn't he dunk? What mascot did he dunk over?
The Orlando
Green.
Yeah.
The sitting dunk, which was in slow motion, one of the most impressive dunks ever.
Does that mascot look like the Philly Fanatic? He's green, right?
Yeah, you got it right. It's the Magic.
I thought he dunked over the Philly Fanatic.
Well, it looks like
the Magic mascot makes a lot more sense.
I think they look the same, except for like maybe one has a snout and the other
one's a little more magical. Yeah. How is Mickey Mouse just not the straight up like mascot for the Magic?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're literally a Disney brand
on their jersey now.
I don't know. Whatever.
Hey, Bobby, real quick question about Syracuse. Are you a Boeheim fan? Jim, not Buddy? Because I've seen, like, basically what I'm getting at is, I don't know if you saw his press conference a few weeks back where he kind of like, he had an exchange with one of the student reporters, and it was a
good friend of mine.
Excessive. Oh, really?
Yeah, one of my his name's Matthew Gutierrez, and
nice.
He was my editor at the Daily Orange. He was a year ahead of me, and great writer. Obviously, ended up working for the Athletic right out of school because he covered Syracuse basketball pretty extensively when he was a student there, and then jumped right into the Athletic when the Athletic was getting going there. So he asked Boeheim about the backup center who had been playing great all season defensively, but wasn't getting the time. But power forward or whoever was in front of him was starting and playing a ton of minutes there, and this guy wasn't getting any because he was younger. Boeheim does the same with the younger players, where it's a very college basketball thing, where old fashioned, where the freshmen kind of have to earn their keep, even if they're like a, you know, great talent or even lottery level talent or NBA hopeful. A lot of times they'll end up getting stuck on the bench behind those guys. And same thing happened for Kadari Richmond, who was that like NBA hopeful guard out of Brewster. And they started playing those guys more in the year. They went on that big run. I never thought in a million years they'd make the tournament this year. And because in large part to those two that ended up playing more, they won a bunch of games at the end and got in. And Matt tweeted something to the effect of, like the team would have went like 25-7 or whatever it was, instead of like close to 500 as they did if those guys played more. And, you know, Boeheim caught wind of that. And this is one of the, I'll try to give you guys like the gist of Boeheim without talking about him for a half hour tonight. But out of all like his like personality traits, one of his biggest is that he pretends to not pay attention to what's out there about the team, but actually pays attention to everything. So he caught wind of this tweet somehow. And on the next press conference on Zoom, Matt had asked him about that situation, I think, or maybe it was something different entirely. But he basically just jumped right out on him and said, "Oh, I never realized 45 years here. If I just played those guys, we would have went undefeated. Maybe I got to ask a guy who never played basketball or is 5'2".
That's when you know you got someone in a corner, is when they say, well, how would you know? Like, you've never done this.
You're 19 years old.
So this is the thing about him. And it's so, I wrote a story about this actually, how like Syracuse is obviously a big media school, sports media. And so like big sports media people have been going there for 40 years. And for those 40 years, Boeheim's been the first like big sports figure that they cover because he's been there for so long.
Yeah.
And pretty much everybody who has covered that team has a Boeheim story. Like Matt's, like my buddy Sam got banned from practice for a year for calling one of the kids' parents because he had a sprained ankle, and the kid said he couldn't play, but Boeheim thought he could, and it ended up becoming like a big controversy. And because the writer called the kid's parents for a take on it, he got banned from practice for a year. Obviously, like the local people who cover him have been fighting with him for years, and everybody's got their story. Mine, I wrote a story about Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard, who are obviously the guards during this run. But when I was there last year, I was covering them in their first year together, and they were so bad at defense. I mean, the defense was just a disaster all year long. And if you use this like tracking data, I forget what the name of it, Synergy, you can like track who gives up, like say people who shot with Boeheim defending them went 4 for 7 in this game, or people who were shooting against Girard went 5 for 7 in this game. And so Boeheim obviously is like 76, and he doesn't use any of that. Like he's all old fashioned. They don't even watch film, which like he just keeps it bare bones. They don't watch film.
Do they read books?
Yeah, they read the paper to get a scouting report.
They just, and like this is kind of how it feels when you're watching Syracuse. It just feels like they roll the ball out there and like
play a little zone, and then that's it, and we win the game.
Yeah,
damn.
He just keeps it simple.
No film because Boeheim can't figure out how to get it in the DVD player.
And there we go. Yeah, that's another Boeheim personality.
The hell with it. Roll out the balls and let's play.
So I wrote a story that Boeheim and Girard were just getting torched at the top of the zone. They were giving up a ton of threes. And so he went off. Obviously, he had caught wind of that story, and he went off on the local writer for Syracuse.com as if he wrote it. And the writer was just so confused. And this is like, you go into these press conferences, and it's not like any other press conferences. Boeheim walks out. He just like stares across the room, goes on like a 3 to 5 minute rant about the game, and then you just yell out. Like no one's leading the press conference. People just yell things out. And if he sees someone who like he's got a vendetta against, and they ask a question, he'll use that opportunity to like get his revenge on them on the spot. So he thought this guy had written the story that I wrote. And took it out on him. And so I remember listening to that, and I'm like, is that about my story? Like I couldn't really tell. And he obviously didn't know who I was. I was only covering the team for a year and a half, and you know, never interviewed him one-on-one or anything like that. But like weeks later, they were at a road game in Louisville, and he brought that like notion up again, and he blamed it. Do you guys know a Ken Palm? It's like the like advanced team rankings for college basketball. So like he has like a metric that like ranks all the teams in college basketball. It has nothing to do with what I mentioned before about like tracking players. And so he blamed the article on Ken Palm this time. And like he went on a whole rant against Ken Palm and how like he doesn't know who gives up what basket and this and that. And Ken Palm just like quote tweeted, and he's obviously got like hundreds and thousands of followers. And he's just like, my website has nothing to do with this. And I don't remember the exact words. That was my Boeheim story. I ended up writing like a negative piece, I guess, that just never got tracked to me and got blamed on pretty much everybody else.
It's like, dude, it's like, that's the thing. It's like if you're covering a team, I was actually gonna ask you earlier, maybe I'll ask you now, about like Celtics and like quote unquote green teamers, which I'm sure you're familiar with. If you watch a team and talk about a team, there's going to be times where you have to say negative things unless you're covering an undefeated perfect team. You know what I mean? Like, it's just part of how it is. So Soapy and I talk about it all the time. Like, we see it on Twitter, and there's certain handles and people and stuff like that. And I'm not saying it's you guys. I think you guys are pretty fair with what you see, but how would you define a green teamer? Like, what does that mean to you?
I mean, I think like there's three parts to it. You got to find silver lining and everything. And I guess overrating your players a little bit, especially like the fringe players on the roster. Yeah. And
let me put it this way. Like you can watch the Celtics recently this year and say there are some negative things coming from this team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the third one of that is like it kind of goes in line with like Boston sports fans too, is like an arrogance level that like you think you can get any other player around the league for like the most minimal price, and like everything's kind of bound to like work out in your favor, which those are like probably the big three green teamer for me.
Yeah, I think you basically described Brian Scalabrini's coverage of the team.
Yeah, I mean, him like laughing off the Smart situation there, which like again, I don't expect you to like kill him for that stupid mistake, but like I don't know, it seemed a little late for what it was during
You're
like
a professional
loss. Yeah.
There was silence like leading up to the laugh too, because you could tell he didn't know how to respond to that.
This guy really did this.
Yeah. It was like, what are you doing? And then just like a bunch of laughter. His like Harrison Barnes crusade all year. Not only that, but the Jeremy Grant one was what really pissed me off, because it was very clear all year long there was no chance the Celtics were getting Jeremy Grant, and he kept like pushing
for non-basketball reasons that he has stated himself.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you say? I don't remember.
Oh, Grant. Yeah. So Grant signed with Detroit. Yeah. He was one of like the most ardent supporters of Black Lives Matter during the bubble. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to go to a team that had a black coach, black GM, and a black city. So like
0 for 3.
Yeah.
As far as coming to Boston.
Yeah, that's but like again, Scal's a professional, and he didn't like see that very like public story on The Athletic that detailed that. Like, come on. And so that's the other thing. Again, I don't want to like be on here blasting Scal, but
that's okay.
Like, come on, you got to like realize what's going on around the league a little bit, not just being like Celtics world.
Yes, I agree. And it's at least like when we had Tommy, it's like, all right, this guy's got fucking Alzheimer's disease. Like, he can say whatever he wants. Scal, there's no excuse. Like, you're like in your prime of your life, I guess, pretty much. Like, this is take a step back and.
Yeah, and Tommy was like a Celtics lifer, like champion.
Have you met Tommy? Did you ever work with Tommy at all, or get to meet him?
The tough one for me is I was in an elevator with him in December, and I think about this a lot now since he ended up passing away. And like, he didn't seem like he was in the greatest mood, and like obviously he was just like going to do his job or whatever. So I didn't really want to bother him. And like, you don't think in that moment that would be the last time you'd see him, and it really it was for me. I never got to have a conversation with him, and that really was one of the things I wanted to be able to do in my career, was meet him and talk to him, because like he really was just like a beacon of history and information. And like, you're comparing him to Scal and all that stuff too. Like, there was a hyperbole to him and like a little bit of a character, but like his analysis was always pretty sharp. And like he knew the game in like a very fundamental way. Even when it started to change in like the later years of his life, he was able to keep up with it decently for how old he was, I thought.
I agree.
And you miss it so much this year, especially Mike too. Like, Mike's, I don't know how much longer he's going to do it, but he's not what he used to be himself either. And it's tough to listen to this year because it really doesn't feel that long ago. Like Mike and Tommy were doing it at like a high level, like probably right before the pandemic.
Well, dude, you know what's crazy is, and Sophie, I know I'll let you go in a second. I know you got a question, but we talked about this before. What's crazy to me is how long Mike Gorman's been doing this. And it hit me during did you watch the Last Dance documentary?
Yeah.
I assume Mike Gorman was calling those Bulls games in the 80s when Jordan dropped like 60 whatever points in the playoffs. That's crazy. Like that's so long ago.
Yeah.
And then he was working with Tommy for, I don't know when did Tommy start the broadcast? Any idea?
I think they were 40 years together, like 86 to 16. So like 40.
Okay, that's insane. And now Mike's just working with the new guy is pretty much what it is. And it's like, yeah, he was with the Celtics for a little bit, but that's a like, I really like when Tommy died, that was sad, but Mike Gorman, I thought like this really stinks. Like you're basically losing like your partner. Like it's almost like a marriage pretty much. And it's like, you guys getting old. He's like it's
it's a lot. His tweet was the greatest honor in my life was being the Mike and Tommy.
Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I'd hang it up. I don't know. It's like, how old is Mike Gorman? In his 80s, 70s?
70s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he just signed a like 3-year contract extension. I thought I saw that fairly recently.
Unless he's making some good dough, I don't know, man.
I mean, he gets to go on his own terms, which is fine. Again, it's not like he's doing a terrible job. It's just he was so good.
Yeah,
you just see it like slipping a little bit at this point. But I mean, we talk about like what the future of the team's going to look like. The future of that broadcast is going to be a huge question because I do think that's very important in a town that cares about like who the voices of its team are and who the media around the team are and all that stuff. Because it has been tough to listen to this year. It really has.
Could be you and Scal.
Oh. I mean, for sure.
You and Nick Gelso.
Oh, now that would be fun. Me and Nick butt heads.
I would tune in.
Boomer rage. I would
go ahead. So
I would love to see Pierce come back here, but I know he's making too much money with ESPN / I know he's just an LA guy. So I don't think he'd ever come back to New England as much as
he's not leaving sitting next to Rachel Nichols to come to Boston, I don't think. Go ahead.
Question about the post-game show, Bobby. So 2 things. Number 1, when you guys are all on there, can you all see the comments that come through on YouTube?
Yeah, you do. And so some nights you look at it and you're very invested in it, and then some nights you prefer not, just to avoid it.
Okay,
it can be all over the place.
I was just curious. And then number 2, who is, if you can name the name, but if you can't name the name, that I understand, who is John the one that comments as CLNS in those videos, or no? Is that
I think it's a mix of people. It's occasionally him. We have a great intern, Tim Shales, who does like a Celtics newsletter and helps us out over there as like the producer of the show, who's in there occasionally. So it's probably one of those 2, or Nick. It could be Nick as well some nights. And Nick's in there as his own YouTube quite a bit too. So
yeah,
that chat is so funny.
Something.
Yeah, it's pretty entertaining. Are you looking forward to whenever you can get back in the arena and like not have to cover it from what do they call that section, like the promenade, where you guys are up at the way top and it looks like Joe Sway's
rafters?
Yeah, up in the rafters,
hanging on to Larry Bird's jersey,
9th floor, the oval, whatever you want to call it, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's you obviously, the biggest reason you want to be in there is to talk to people, especially one-on-one. And I had gotten a few opportunities to do that. Obviously, I was in college up until December of last year, so I was kind of in and out. I was more covering Syracuse than the Celtics back then, but ever since I've gotten back, really, it's been pandemic time, so it's just Zooms and up in the oval. So, I mean, I can't wait to be covering this team on like a everyday basis where you can go in there and talk and kind of get a feel for the team. And this year, especially where there's just so much unknown about like, why is it like this? Yeah. I mean, we're missing that so badly right now. And no one's really filling that gap. It feels like, just because no one has access to these guys.
I would like to say, though, in the 2 games that they've had since fans have been added, I know that there's still crowd noise being pumped in, but the 2,000 fans or whatever that have been allowed have done a good job of, like, they've been loud. And I think that the difference in the games, like, would have been even worse if there wasn't a crowd noise in there to kind of, like, I feel like this is the kind of team where the maturity level or the poise is such that they really benefit from a home crowd more so than like any other given team.
Yeah, it feels
I
like
can
it,
see that.
especially for defensive intensity purposes. Like, you don't know what else it really is. They had most of the same personnel this year. I know you're mixing in Thompson, Smart, Brown, Tatum, world-renowned defenders, especially last year. This was the best transition defense last year. Top 5 overall defensive efficiency. And they just came out from opening night this year, and you saw in that Bucks game, it just wasn't right. They didn't have the same like attentiveness to Giannis or whatever else that they usually do against that team. And it just kept sliding. The Nets blew them out second night, and the defense was just bad for the rest of the season. And now within the last month, I think it's down like 24th last I checked. And so that like crowd, I guess, plays a little bit into that. Maybe like my assessment was that Tatum and Brown are doing so much more on offense that you usually do see players slide on the defensive end, but not this bad. And then Smart in particular, like Smart's just going to be so much better.
One. Yeah, I feel like
guys,
even after he's like before Smart came back and once Smart did come back, the defense hasn't improved. If anything, the numbers might be worse. And it was like, it was almost a sigh of relief last night to see them only give up 113. Honestly, I was like, oh, this is kind of a low scoring game for the Celtics. I think it was 113, 108, something like that. But
and I thought Fournier gave them some good stuff on that end. I'm excited to see him get integrated. I know the 0-10 was a big joke, one of many this year, and he came out and hit 3 of 6 last game. I'd like to see him get the ball in his hands a little more and make plays and stuff like that. And it's another reason I look back on that Smart thing and say, like, if he was going out, Fournier would have even more responsibility and ball time and that kind of stuff. And like, he really, if you go back and watch that game, he did a sensational job defensively. All you got to do is position yourself, not get killed in that screen and roll action. And you can be a pretty good defender in this system to just be on top of the switches. And he's done that throughout the last few years of his career. And hopefully he'll be a longer term piece with this team. He's still, I think, 27. So he's got a few more years of good basketball in him. And hopefully this wasn't just a, short-term fix for a team that might not be going anywhere anyway, which is what I think a lot of people who didn't want to see them do anything thought, that like, whatever, this team's just not worth saving. I wanted to give them a chance. And that's ultimately what Ainge said too. Like, he felt like he owed it to the coach and the players, and they didn't have enough around them coming in this year, which was certainly true. Now you have it. So they got to be more competitive than this.
Yeah, I agree. And I had the same train of thought. It's like, there really wasn't a move at the deadline I thought they could have made that puts them in legit title contention or even Eastern Conference champion contention. I don't know. I just think it's a very top heavy conference. Like we were talking the other day, if you look at the standings, it's literally Milwaukee, Philly, and Brooklyn, and then everyone else. It's like, I think it's literally like 8 games between like 3 and 4, which is fine. It is what it is. I mean, that's most sports have a top heavy kind of thing. But I know we're coming up on time too, but I did want to ask you this. This doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. Just your quick opinion. Do you think they break up Tatum and Brown? Like, do you think that's realistic either this offseason or in whatever you consider the near future?
No, because if they weren't willing to trade Smart at the deadline for a trade that could have improved them or arguably could have improved them, I just don't know what they would be doing this offseason that would be warranted of trading Brown. Tatum's definitely not going anywhere. I think he is pretty evidently the centerpiece of this team for the next 5 years. And
is that what you agree with? If anything, keep Tatum and have to leave Brown?
It depends.
If they had to split them up for whatever reason, say, they get an offer they can't refuse type of thing.
I think the only reason I would move on from Brown is if like Tatum really made a stand that if he's not made happy, he's going to leave the team. And I still feel like we're so far from that. I know it gets brought up a lot because things have not looked great the last 7 months or so. but they're in the first year of their new deals. Tatum hasn't even started his new deal
true.
yet.
Yeah, you're
so like, I know players can pretty much opt out of their contracts at any given time, but these guys are still 22, 23. I still feel like they're fairly committed to making this work somehow. And even though they've been frustrated this year, I think they've both remained pretty determined to try to turn this thing around and haven't given up all that much yet. So you never know when that thing's going to come around the door, but I just don't see the move this offseason. That was another reason I wanted them to be active at the deadline, because I didn't think, short of giving up Brown, that you could acquire all that much. And it's crazy that at the deadline, it seems like teams, like I said, Vucevic was a guy that Orlando would have wanted Brown for, and John Collins too. Atlanta tried to push that in the Brown direction. So that's the tough place the Celtics are still in. They don't have a ton anymore, but they still do have some really great pieces like Brown, who teams are going to ask for, no matter who it is that the trade conversations are centered around. And that's killed Boston for so long. You see these other deals around the league, like Harden for Allen and LeVert, and Davis for like Ingram and Josh Hart. And like, those are nice players coming back, but they knew they couldn't ask for LeBron, and they knew maybe Houston could have asked for Irving, but Houston didn't want Irving. And so they just didn't even make the request. When teams looking at the Celtics, I know they have some other pieces, but teams really want is Brown. Yeah. And so it feels like for the foreseeable future, if they want to improve the situation, it's going to have to be Brown. And that puts them in a tough place. It puts a lot more pressure on their drafting, which hasn't been amazing. Ability to like highlight mid-level free agents, which they obviously did a disastrous job with this year. So there's a lot of pressure on Ainge going forward to try to like pull off something incredible because they've committed to Stevens, they're committed to Tatum and Brown, as you asked there. So what are gonna be the pieces to creatively get the best out of Tatum and Brown going forward? They failed with that in an epic way this year, and there's opportunity to make it right here. They still have 7 firsts. They still have Rob if they want to send him out and sell high on him now for something else. There's not a ton here, but I do think they still have just enough flexibility to try something this offseason, because I still think Brown and Tatum are good enough to be the pieces of this year for the team for years to come.
It's going to be the summer of Bradley Beal. Yeah, that's what the summer story wise.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's like the sell high on Robert Williams to me. That maybe I'm in the minute. That window seems really small to me. I don't know. Like I just like if this is, and again, I'm not saying this is Robert Williams' peak, what we've been seeing lately. I hope it's not. But my fear, he's out tonight, or he was out whatever the other night, the next game. I just hope it doesn't. We haven't already hit that peak, and then he sucks for the rest of the year with all these new minutes. And then it's like, all right, great. There's an asset we thought we had that we don't have anymore. That's my biggest fear.
It's been a couple games now. The first one was unbelievable against Milwaukee.
And I love Robert Williams. When he's playing well, it's so fun to watch.
Yeah, the thing I'm seen as like the Robert Williams hater on the show, but I don't see him as like Embiid or Davis or one of these. Like, even if he reaches his peak's probably like Clint Capella or who's like another great like screen and dive center, Mitchell Robinson, DeAndre. Those kind of guys who were phenomenal role centers on teams, but ultimately not the thing that was going to swing. For those groups.
That's fair. So are you thinking if there's any offseason moves, it's more along the lines of like a Williams Smart picks package as opposed to like one bigger name like JB?
Yeah, we're just padding depth. I mean, they still have 11 million on that TPE, so like Larry Nance fits that. Bench level players, and this team needs some bench production. Again, you look at the bench. You look at the bench on Wednesday. It's Cornette, Grant Williams, and I know they got some injuries mixed in there. Pritchard. And I know Pritchard's been nice, but they just don't have firepower off their bench. And they thought Neesmith could be that. They thought Langford. They drafted Langford to be the guy who would step in if Hayward left, essentially, it feels like. And he was so far from doing that.
Yeah. Hayward held up his end of the bargain. He left.
Yeah.
Langford, quite frankly.
I mean, the last 2 drafts have just absolutely nailed this team. And it's the big, they decided that we're going to stay low cost on rookies, avoid the tax, and ask our high level players to do more and hopefully develop the younger guys quickly under Stevens, which they had done in the past. And they just picked such poor choices Who knows? Grant might go somewhere else and be a good player. Romeo might like figure it out.
That's fine with me.
They're all so young, but
yeah, let them go.
The team was built to rely on those guys right away. So even if they have long-term potential, like they needed to be good right away, and almost none of them were. No,
Grant can go be Zach Randolph somewhere else. I really don't care. Like he can reach his peak.
And it always kills with like the Euro stuff. And I was just looking at the 2019 draft yesterday. Obviously, they traded Matisse Thybulle, who is like top 5 in that draft in efficiency at this point.
I would take him today. Yep.
Brandon Clark's the second best player behind Zion in that draft in terms of like box plus minus right now. And those are guys that they picked Grant right around. And so you can do that in any given draft, but those are guys this team needed.
Yeah, I think we'll sign you off here, but I remember when we talked about this, probably over the summer, we'll do like a random draft deep dive every now and then. One of the more frustrating ones has to be taking Kelly Olynyk and then seeing Giannis go like literally a pick or two. And I get it. Giannis wasn't Giannis then, but still seeing looking back on drafts is so funny because it's like on draft night, everyone's going to be an all-star. And then when you look back on it, what's crazy about the NBA was you look back on it in 3 or 4 years, dude, 80% of the people aren't serviceable players. Like the NBA is so hard to draft because you only get 2 rounds. And like, I guarantee if we pulled up like the 2016 NBA draft, I guarantee half the guys either aren't in the league and 60% aren't what you would consider like serviceable players. It's just an absolute crapshoot.
And it's too bad too, because the league for so long hasn't had a developmental structure. Like the D League was so bad, and then the G League still coming along, but the pay's not there for those guys. So if guys don't make it in the league, they're gonna go somewhere else where there's pay, and that's not the G League. So it's too bad that like Yabusele, for example, couldn't find like a developmental system to stay in. And again, he probably just stunk and wasn't ever gonna work. But like, who's another guy like Fab Melo? Like he showed some promise there in the G League, but it wasn't enough competition for him to be able to translate to the pros. And RJ Hunter and those kind of guys who the Celtics have drafted and just not been able
Zizic.
Yeah.
Now the developmental league is like playing in Europe. You go to like Israel or China, and you might go there with a goal to come back to the NBA. But you go there and you turn into Steph Marbury, who like becomes like Mr. China.
That's the
thing.
I'm
not coming back.
It's a different culture. You end up getting luxuries over there that if you're gonna have to go back to like making nothing in the NBA, you might as well stay over there. And if you talk about it from like a developmental standpoint, the games over there are so different. It's not transferable to the NBA, really.
That's fair. Yeah. That's why like Luka was like cooking adults when he was like 13.
I love the Luka story. I mean, that's if you want to make it in basketball, that's what you have to do. Like you have to start playing professional at 14.
9.
Yeah. And then like, reach the NBA at 18, and then you have like a 15-year window there of your prime. Yep. If you're coming into the NBA at like 23, we've seen it so often.
It's too late.
It's way too late.
Bobby, I tried, and it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, bro. Like you just turned 23. If you're gonna make a run at the NBA, bro, like it's this year or bust. So no, I don't want to I don't want to end on a low note, but it's pretty much that, or move to Israel and just like I said,
I've been trying for so long to dunk. Like I'm a half inch up. And I feel like that's just like step one.
So, well, how tall are you?
I'm 6'2".
Okay. All right. So you'll get there.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm so close, and I just can't get that extra half inch.
You have, as guys in our early 30s, you have like probably 4 more years before you hit your peak athleticism, I would think.
Yep.
Nice.
I'd agree.
That's good to hear.
With that, so now we can end on a positive note. Thank you, Soapy. So Bob, before we let you go, man, where's the best place for people to find you online?
At Real Bob Manning. I put up most of my content, whether it's podcast writing, at realbobmanning.com. Obviously right at Celtics Blog, Boston Sports Journal, and CLNSmedia.com. And of course, check us out on YouTube. I got a channel, Bobby Manning, do some film breakdowns and stuff like that. And then CLNS for the post-game show and all that stuff.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. We'll put that in the show notes. But appreciate you coming on with us, man. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Let's do it again.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, Bobby.